Well, hey, y'all. Welcome to the When We Walk podcast, where this is a podcast where we talk about the questions that we all ask as we walk through life. I'm Shireen.
I'm Micah.
Let's chat.
All right, so question for you as we begin.
You always like to do this.
Yep.
You always like to just throw
Bring
one
it on
out.
you. Yep. So if we had never met and fallen in love, if you had never been mesmerized by my, and you were now 43 years old and single and you had never married.
Okay.
What would your life look like?
Oh, that's really hard to answer because it's hard to know. Based off my 20-year-old self,
Yeah.
I would have thought I would probably be living in some remote village in Africa, birthing babies, helping women mother.
Yeah.
Even though I wouldn't have, but I would have probably gone back and finished nursing school and been
Yeah.
able to do all this and just lived overseas in some mud hut somewhere.
Mud hut.
Just
Nice. You'd be
serving
living in a
people
mud
and
hut.
Jesus.
Nice. Wow.
I mean, I think
that would be a very
that's
different
what
life than what you're currently
it would be
experiencing.
so different. But that's what I thought.
Yeah. Mhm.
My 20-year-old
That's where
self
you were headed.
thought
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
what about you?
That's good. I think I would just be, I don't know what I would do job wise or where I would have lived. I think I would be miserable because, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but I so wanted to get married. Like my whole life, like I was one of those guys that was
you
just
were
like,
always dating.
I am ready to be married.
Yes.
And so I'm so grateful I was able to. I wouldn't be miserable. I shouldn't say that.
Well, we hope not, but if it was a desire of yours, then that would have been
It would have been a long,
hard.
Yeah, it would have been a long journey. Yep, for sure. So you made me happy.
Oh, well, I'm so glad.
Mostly, most days. Yeah, I mean, marriage is real
It's
life,
hard.
right? Yep.
Let's be honest. Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of leads to, I think we should talk about singleness a little bit. And,
Specifically, singleness in the church.
Yeah. Singleness in the church. There's a lot of it. For some people, it's a season, a short season. Some people, it's a long season. Some people, it's a season they really embrace. And some people, it's a season they really struggle through.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there.
I looked up in preparation.
Wow.
I looked up. I like statistics.
Yeah, you do.
I think it kind of gives you, it helps you approach a topic with perspective, right?
Yep.
And I looked up, according to the U.S. Census, there is about 47% of the population that is currently single.
47.
47.
Of adults?
Yes, of adults.
Wow. Okay.
I think that's what it says.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that means currently single, maybe there's most of those people or many of those people hope to be married. Many of them maybe don't. We don't know. But at least it helps us understand that almost half our population, and I did read in this same article that people are getting married later in life. The younger generations are more focused on their purpose and like what they want in life and even accumulating wealth and things like that. And that marriage seems to be something they just maybe later in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not always their first driving thing they're going after.
Yeah. It's kind of like the order of things has shifted, that people used to kind of think right after high school, right after college, it's time to get married. And now people want to more establish themselves. I read recently, actually a while back, in a class I took at Fuller that because of like the amount of education that's required now to really like
almost
move up in the world in a sense,
know.
because of all the technology and all that, that it just delays marriage, it delays parenting. And then you mentioned finances, like people want to feel financially stable, and that takes a lot longer now than it used to. So yeah, it's kind of like the steps are for just traditionally is kind of you get through school, then you establish yourself, then you get married versus the other way around.
Yeah. I think also just, let's be honest, probably the casual dating, casual sex culture probably keeps people from thinking marriage is worth it because you can, in their minds, in a lot of people's minds, that can fulfill something in you, whether it's just your sexual desire or it's, friendship and relationship and intimacy in that way, living together, companionship in that way, instead of seeing marriage as kind of this lifelong commitment. I don't know. So all that to say, singleness it's here. And there are people.
Half of U.S. adults, and
it's in the church. And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that we have to talk about more often. We both have a lot of single friends. I have more single girlfriends than you probably have single guy friends. But I think all of my single girlfriends, for the most part, are in the church. And many of them are my age. Some of them are older. And we have talked about this a lot. And this comes up in a lot of our conversations. And the way they share it is from their heart of things that they've seen that have been kind of hurtful to the place of where they are in life right now, specifically in the church. And so I think it is a conversation we need to have. And for you and me as leaders in the church, why not talk about it?
Yeah, it's a good thing to talk about.
So
I think a good starting point is to think about 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul talks about marriage and singleness. And really what he's doing there, I won't read it, but what he's doing there is he is elevating singleness to really on the same plane as marriage. In their culture, marriage was such a status symbol. And what he was, and it gave you access to really like being a person in the community. I mean, if you were single, there was a real lack of being seen, having the same rights, having the same opportunities, all of that. And so within the church context, what he's doing in 1 Corinthians 7 is he's elevating singleness to say, actually, it's a very valuable place in the family of God. It's a very valuable place in the kingdom of God, just as much as marriage is. And so he really puts them on equal playing fields. But I think when it comes to how the church in 2024 actually operates, I think a lot of times we don't put them on equal footing.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think we do.
Either it's intentionally or unintentionally, but it often happens.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, Paul was single. Jesus was single. Like some of the people we love and listen to what they say and believe everything. But for some reason we forget that their singleness is just as much a value and what we can learn from as well. So I think that's important to remember. Okay, so I think a good question to start with is, how has the church missed it with ministering to singles? I'm gonna let you start with that as lead pastor.
I'll say unintentionally we can just kind of forget to speak to the singles. And so the examples in sermons can all be kind of marriage or family related. You do events and there's usually 8 chairs at we've had someone mention this to us. You do little circular tables and there's always 8 chairs at the table, which kind
always
of
pairs.
Assumes that people are coming in pairs.
Yes.
There are lots of opportunities, just the way we talk, there's this assumption that if you're in a part of a church that you're probably married and most likely with kids, and we don't often verbalize to the single people, if you're in a different stage of life or if you are single. And so I think sometimes just unintentionally, and I've had friends over the years who have helped me with that.
Yeah,
to say,
me
hey,
too.
Could you use an example of a single person every now and then? Or can you speak to the single people? Or can you think through, when you think application of scripture, can you apply it also to someone who's in a different phase of life? And that's been really helpful for me to have those voices in my life to help me there.
I think also, that's really helpful because just from the platform, what we speak is important and it shows what we value. And so if we give examples of different phases and walks of life, then it values people with where they are. But then I also think just in general, I feel like the message within the church is that marriage is the finish line. A lot of times. And that we think that the end goal is I need to get married, I need to have kids because God blesses that. I don't know. I don't know what people think, but that's not obviously after what you said about what Paul says, like he is trying to help people see, no, your life still has value. You're becoming married, though the world may, or your culture may look at it, differently. What he's trying to say is, no, your value is not in your marriage or your singleness, though that does inform how you view the world and how you approach the world and the decisions you make in life. But I think a lot of times, because the way we talk about marriage, and I mean, a lot of people are married, so you do speak to that. A lot of people have kids, and those are hard seasons, so you do have to speak to it. But I think sometimes we speak to it so much that it feels like this has to be the pinnacle. Yeah. And if I don't get here, I've failed.
I'm missing something. Yeah. And
or I'm missing. Yeah. I have a gap in my life that,
or I haven't arrived. Yeah. I do think the finish line analogy is helpful. Because it can say like you haven't quite gotten to where other people have gotten.
Right.
Peter Scazzaro does a really good job of explaining how
I've heard you say
our
this.
Relational status, whatever it is our gift to the world. And so if you are married, then your marriage is a gift to the world. If you think about it in terms of, okay, how can now my marriage be a blessing to others? If you're a parent, then it's how can my marriage and my parenting be a blessing to the world? And for singleness, how can my singleness be a blessing to the world? We need expressions of all of that in the church. And one is not better than the other. Again, going back to Paul, he really brings everything to a level playing field in terms of your relational status.
I think that's really good to remember. I think we forget that we have something to offer in that part of our life, and that a married person, especially in the church, I mean, we're talking about in the context of the church, if you are a married couple and you have kids, like you can absorb some single people into your family and welcome them in. If you're a single person, you have probably, we can't assume this, I think people do assume this of singles a lot, that they have more time and space. And some do, but sometimes they do fill up their lives a lot more because they do have a lot more space to fill up. But if you do have that, you can offer your singleness in a way of like, hey, I can come and watch your kids so you can go out. I can do, that time frame of volunteering at the church because I don't have kids that are going to soccer games and baseball games or whatever. So I think looking at what you have to offer specifically even to the family of God I think that's really good.
Yeah. And I think too, it's how you walk through that season that is an offering to the world. And so for instance, with marriage or parenting or marriage and parenting, it's the joys and the struggles of that place in life that as you walk through faithfully sets an example, it encourages others. But I think singleness, the same thing. Like when you are in a place, in a season of singleness and you both embrace the joys, but also are honest about the struggles. It sets an example. It encourages people. It gives them hope. It helps them understand, connect with what they're going through. So I think both expressions, when they're walked through faithfully, they become a source of encouragement for people around you.
That's so
for even me, just making the joke at the beginning, I'd be miserable if I was single now. But the reality is I know people who are single and have been single from,
whether by choice single. Or just,
and the joy that they walk in their intimacy with Jesus is an inspiration.
Yes.
Because you see this person's delight, this person's joy, their intimacy with Jesus is this beautiful example of what that true connection is. That's kind of what Paul was trying to say in 1 Corinthians 7 is I don't have the same distractions that a married person has. And that's actually an example of the beauty of Jesus and the kind of relationship we can have with him.
I think that's good. I think one of the other areas, and when I've talked to my girlfriends specifically about like kind of where the church misses some of the conversations around this is when it comes to sexual purity, that we tend to only talk about keep yourself pure until you're married.
Yep.
And then you'll be completely free. When I think sexual purity is something you have to, like self-control, sexual purity has to be practiced throughout life. Married, single, all of life, you will have to practice self-control and purity
Yep.
in marriage and in singleness. And I think we tend to not talk about that openly enough to help singles see, no, we're in this with you. We know yours looks different because you are having to, withhold those desires in a different way. But we're also having to do it to practice sexual purity and kind of self-control in other ways as well. Like we can understand together kind of. I think that's an important conversation that we don't talk about maybe in that way.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, there's a misconception that once you're married, you don't have to have self-control any longer.
Yes, that is not true at all.
It's not true. Yeah.
We know a lot of married people that there's still struggles there, and we have to talk about it's across the board. You have to if you can do it even well in singleness early on, then you will carry that practice with you into marriage. But I think it is something we all have to grow and learn in together.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one that a lot of my friends talk about is kind of loneliness. And how do we talk about it very often? I don't feel like we talk about loneliness very often. I think in a culture that we're in now more too.
It's become a little bit more on the surface, I think, in our world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But I think
probably doesn't naturally flow out unless we're specifically addressing loneliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I think loneliness also with community. What does healthy friendship, intimate relationship, because you can have intimate relationship with people that you're not married, and we're not talking sexual intimacy. We're talking friendship, deep, intimate friendship, which single people need to continue to be a healthy single in life.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to understand that sexual fulfillment is not a God-given right, but intimacy really is a part of our design. And I believe God wants us to experience relational intimacy. And you don't have to be married to have that. You can have that with friends. You can have it with companions. And so I think that's a big piece of it, is helping people who are single, who probably do struggle with loneliness, at least on the surface more so, help them find their place in the church. And that's ultimately, I think, what we're getting at is, if you're single in a church like ours, you can find yourself kind of wandering around, wondering, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
Can I be a part of this life group because there's only couples in that life group?
Right.
Can I go to this event because it's a marriage conference, it's a parenting conference? The topic they're addressing is going to be about, something that I'm not currently experiencing. We often don't set up environments that single people can enter into really easily
and comfortably. And feel like I am wanted here.
So that increases loneliness. When that happens.
So I think that's the basic thing with that, like where we have missed it is single people, whether you're young and single and still, hoping and praying for a spouse, whether you've chosen singleness and you're like, no, this is a gift God's given me and I'm choosing this through life, or whether you are divorced and, you're later in life and, or older, like we have older single friends who have been widowed and that you still desire that friendship. I think what we have to realize is the whole is, am I wanted here? Is there a place for me? Am I seen? Am I accepted? And I think that's the bigger question that a lot of single people ask as they step into any room, but especially the church, because that is where you want to be seen, known, wanted, loved, and accepted. So
that's good.
So what can we do better?
What can we do better? Yeah. I mean, I think there's two sides to that, because there is kind of this gap between the singles and the marrieds.
Right.
In a lot of churches, how do you bridge that gap? I think both statuses can work towards one another, and so can move towards one another. So I think for families to talk about, how can we create space in our lives for people who are single? How can we invite this single friend into our family life, or give them a home? That's one of the ways you can offer your relational status to the world. In the words of Peter Scazzaro, is to say, We have a home where we do family dinners, or we go on family vacations, or
Yes,
we have family
vacations.
traditions, and we want you to be a part of those
Yes.
things. And I think that's a huge value that you can offer to people.
That's one of the things a lot of my single girlfriends always say, especially as you get a little bit older, is family traditions. That's a hard one, because if you're maybe in your 40s or 50s and you're like, I'm not always going to go back to my parents' house for Christmas anymore, or maybe your parents have passed, and you are single and you don't have kids and you do Christmas differently, but you can be invited into other people's traditions. And I think we all have to remember kind of those people, our single friends in our lives, and say, hey, you're welcome at our table for Thanksgiving, for Easter, for Christmas. When we go on vacation, that's another big one.
Yeah.
We have friends all the time I have girlfriends who have said, I miss family vacations. I don't get to do those because I don't have family anymore.
Yeah.
So tacking, she's like, I've asked, like, hey, can I join you on your vacation? That sounds fun. Yeah. I don't have kids to go to Disney World with. Can I join you?
Yes.
And I think that's great.
Yep. I think it is too. I think it's important. So you have that. And then you have, I think on the single side, I would encourage singles to let people who are married and let families into your life.
Yeah.
Because just because you're not married doesn't mean your life isn't interesting. It doesn't mean you don't have things going on. It doesn't mean you don't have a place that you can invite people into. And as a married man with a family, I think oftentimes the relationships we have with single people is more one directional. It's them coming into our lives. It's not as much us being invited into their space. But I would say to reciprocate. I think it's helpful just to communicate that, like, hey, I want you in my life as well. But also, like, your life has value too. Yeah. Like, just because you don't have, a vacation planned, maybe initiate that.
Yes.
Reach out and say, hey, okay. I want to go to this place. I'm looking for some people to go to. Would you
either with
go?
Or without your kids?
Right,
or
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's really good. I also think for singles, I do think they want a space to find each other in the church. Yeah. Whether it's just for friendship or whether it is for companionship. And so for singles, I would say, like, if it's not there, go find it. Yep. Create it. Maybe it's a life group. Maybe it's just a gathering you want to host in your home or out somewhere. But then for the church to help remember, hey, we need to remember that these people are kind of looking for one another. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, especially we don't have to be their matchmakers, although that's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
Because people want to find their spouse in their church, let's be honest. But also creating space to understand what church as a family is, what friendship really looks like, like going back to that intimate relationship and creating space for people to find that, I think is important.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, and I think in the ideal world, and again, this is ideal, that I think the way Jesus set things up and what Paul was trying to communicate to his churches that he wrote to was really you mentioned church as a family, like your spiritual family really is where your ultimate priority and loyalty are intended to lie.
Yeah, and that's a hard one for us to swallow.
Your biological family is a part of that. Yes. But the spiritual family is the one that will last for eternity. And that's the one where your ultimate loyalty is intended to lie. And not to the point where you give yourself so much to church that you ignore your family.
Right,
that's not what we're saying at all. But when there is this shared sense of we're not just a gathering of people that come together and sing some songs and listen to a message, but we're actually a family.
We're family.
It brings everybody in, regardless of relational status. And then you could get into all kinds of other things, regardless of social status or ethnic background or age or anything. It brings everybody in and gives them an equal place at the table, where everyone can feel at home, everyone can feel wanted, everyone can be seen, regardless of the kind of the labels that we carry.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
I also think communicating. If you're married and you have single friends in your life, you got to ask them the hard questions.
Yeah.
hold them accountable in areas that they may want to, if you have that type of relationship with them. Ask them, where are they struggling in this season of their singleness? Where are they finding joy? Help them find the joy in their singleness. And then I think for singles to be able to be vulnerable to share that, those things with your married friends. Where are you struggling? That has been the most helpful thing in my relationships with a lot of my girlfriends, is when they share that, hey, I'm in a season where I'm loving my singleness. I actually really am enjoying it. I have a girlfriend right now. She's able to travel the world with her job because she can, and she loves that, and watching God do all the things, and she loves it. But then there are seasons where she'll call on us as her girlfriends who are all married, and she'll say, this is hard. I'm in a really, really kind of lonely place. Can y'all pray? Can you check in on me? And we're like, yep, we will do that. We'll check in on you. And what do you need? And then I also think it's okay to ask, do you want me to help set you up? People might want that still. And so we need to be good family members. And help them out. So those are great conversations. I think it's important. Those are important to have.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great. So maybe a good way to wrap this up is to think about, if you're single, who are some married people in your life that you could reach out to say, hey, I'm here. I'd love to build a friendship with you. And then for married people, if you've got some single people in your life, what steps can you take to really pull them in to your home, to your life, to make sure you're caring for them well, in the whole of who they are.
Especially as believers in the church, we want to do this church as a family thing really well.
It is really hard to.
It's a good way to practice it.
And I just think in general, it's hard to get outside of ourselves. Wherever you find yourself, you're going to kind of see life through that lens, and that's okay. But having people who are in different phases of life than you actually help broaden your understanding. They deepen your love. And make us all better.
So, I agree.
Great. All right. I think we covered it.
All
right. Well, thanks so much for joining us on When We Walk. We can't wait to be with you next time.